Jason Kenney has now proposed it twice, that Canada should somehow be involved in Syria. That would mean that a dictator who's been using chemical weapons against his own people would somehow be deciding what Canadian troops can and can't be doing. It's so misguided, it's so wrong, that every person in Canada should be standing up foursquare against it.
That's NDP leader Tom Mulcair today railing against the idea that next week's government motion to extend the Iraq mission against ISIS may also expand the mission to include Syria. Some coalition forces have been carrying out airstrikes on ISIS targets within Syria since August, namely the United States, obviously. But Canadian strikes have been limited to Iraq. Is that about to change? Should Canada's military be working with the Assad regime within Syria? And what would a shift to Syria mean for Canadian special forces on the ground? Joining me now to discuss this in Winnipeg, James Bazan, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence. NDP health critic Murray Rankin joins us by Skype from Victoria, and Liberal defence critic Joyce Murray is in Vancouver today. Good to see you all. Appreciate you being here. James Bazan, let's start with you. You heard there Tom Mulcair say that, if we moved into Syria, even in a bombing capacity, that somehow Bashar al-Assad would have some sort of say in the way we were conducting ourselves because we would need permission to get into his country. What do you make of that analysis of how it might play out?
Well, to be fair to Mr. Mulcair, the NDP historically has opposed every war measure that Canada has ever taken in the fight against oppression, the fight against totalitarian regimes, to fight terrorism like we are right now in Iraq. And so they're going to oppose us because that's what they always do. We're going to extend and expand this mission. The motion is going to come before the House of Commons next week, where we'll have a fulsome debate on the substance and details of the motion and how we move forward with this mission. And as Minister Kenney has said, ISIL is on the retreat. They've given up significant territory. The Iraqi security forces and the Kurdish Peshmerga are seeing success in retaking some of the towns and villages that ISIL had captured last summer. And they're regrouping themselves on the other side of the border in Syria. So we are giving serious consideration to how we might play a role in that, and making sure that we degrade and ultimately stop ISIL from not only being a threat to us here in Canada, but also the genocide that they've been committing in Syria and Iraq.
But I think Mr. Mulcair's point is, why would Canada be comfortable working inside a country where the head of the country is engaged in a civil war and killing some of his own people? And what would that look like then? How would we be comfortable doing that?
As we've said, it's not something that anyone's comfortable with. We are ultimately opposed to the Assad regime and the brutal dictatorship that he has carried out on his people, the civil war that we've experienced over the last 4 years there. But we will be working with our coalition partners as we look at how Canada participates going forward.
Okay, let's get everybody else to weigh in there. Murray Rankin, we heard from your leader off the top. Is there any situation under which the NDP would be comfortable with an extension or expansion in terms of the fight against ISIS? I mean, it's a real fight. Is there no scenario under which this would make sense for your party?
Well, first of all, it's not true what James said about our position in the past. Of course, we were supportive of the Libya mission because it had UN sanction, and this has neither UN nor NATO sanction. This is a U.S.-led group going into a foreign country. Listen, if it goes into Syria, who knows the legality of that, and how do you take instructions from a brutal dictator? I don't understand that. We believe that any kind of mission creep like we've seen now should be challenged in Parliament. This was to have been a limited mission. It's gone from 69 people to 669 people. We know that this is expanding it from well beyond the advise and assist role, as you know, to something which looks a lot like combat to me after Sergeant Doiron was killed in pretty close to the front lines. People are saying, what is going on? So we're very concerned about this. We think the focus should be on humanitarian aid.
But how can you deliver humanitarian aid if ISIS is hurting people on the ground? I mean, don't you need to be doing both things?
What do airstrikes accomplish ultimately? We're wondering whether there's a value added. What is the most effective way for Canada to be involved? We think that there's 5 million people affected, 2 million displaced people in refugee camps and the like or more.
But is it not ISIS that's displacing those people?
It is part of their collateral damage in this conflict. And so we're saying the more effective role for Canada to play would be that. And we're saying a limited. We said, listen, some help with military aid to the Peshmerga was something that we were prepared to contemplate. Some war material was something we could accomplish. We could also assist with. But we really don't see that Canada is going to add any value to this conflict simply bombing people.
Let me bring in Joyce Murray. Joyce Murray, where does the Liberal Party stand on the idea of an expansion, particularly if it involves moving into Syria in some capacity?
Well, Rosemary, earlier in your previous segment, you talked about not putting the cart before the horse until the details are available on cable pick and pay. We're saying the same thing with this mission. There's been a lot of speculation, there's been hints, there's been rumors, but we haven't seen the substance of the motion yet, and we'll wait until we see that before we comment.
Fair enough, but the government has said, James Bazan just said it, that they are going to extend and expand. Is the Liberal Party at least in favor of those notions?
Well, we'll see what they mean by that. We've been clear that we believe ISIS is a serious and a real threat to security around the world, and so we support the international efforts to against ISIL. So that's where we have been all along. With the previous mission, we'd said that the case for a combat role had not been made, but we supported other kinds of military assistance to the troops in Iraq who were directly fighting to protect their communities and their people and their territory. So we'll see what expand and extend this mission is. How is it being defined by this government? But I'll come back to the concern about honesty. And James Bazan just now made a claim that was completely false, and so Murray corrected him on that. But you can only do that so many times as a government before you've lost all credibility. And unfortunately, this government is far down that track. The Prime Minister himself has not been honest and open on what the parameters are for the past deployment, and we can't trust him to be honest on this one.
Let's let James Bazan respond to that.
Well, Rosie, it's kind of the same soundtrack that we always get from Joyce on this show. And the reality is that, you know, unlike the Liberal government, which sent our troops into harm's way in Afghanistan without appropriate equipment, we are making sure our troops have the equipment they need to do the air campaign, as well as the Special Operation Forces on the ground with the advise and assist mandate in Northern Iraq. Yeah. And I'll just say that, you know, going back to what Murray mentioned about humanitarian aid, you know, Canada is the 6th largest donor in Syria and is the 5th largest donor in Iraq. We've helped over 1.7 million people with food, 1.3 million people making sure that they have shelter and other relief supplies so they can deal with this situation. And we've educated, providing schooling to almost a half a million children. So, you know, we're there, we're doing that, and we see this as a whole of government approach.
Okay.
Minister Nicholson stressed that today in his speech to ambassadors.
Can I just ask you this? Would special forces be moved into Syria, or is that completely off the table?
Look, we're going to have, as already Joyce pointed out, this is going to come next week, and that we'll have that debate.
I know, I'm very impatient. I'm very impatient.
Very patient, but you'll see the Liberals actually probably swallow themselves whole, since they opposed this mission before, and now they're sending signals that they're going to look at this. And we are looking for multi-party support for our troops as they take on this terrorist death cult.
Are you really, though? Are you really looking for multi-party support? Because it doesn't matter whether you have it or not. So why would you say that?
I tell you, it definitely shows to our troops and to Canadians that there is support from a broad range. But we
but you can support the troops without supporting a mission. Can you not, James?
But also, you know, at the same time, we're seeing Canadians are concerned that this ISIL terrorist threat has been just such a genocidal organization. The way they brutalized people, sold women into slavery, you know, raped children, and have threatened us right here in Canada as well.
My point is equating a policy stance on whether you're going into Iraq with something about not supporting the troops. Do you think that that's a valid point?
No, I think if you look at it, we want to have Parliament approve this, and of course, us with having the majority, it's going to happen. But we want to have that fulsome debate, and You know, in the past, when we have deployed in Afghanistan, when we did bring motions before the House, we had multi-party support for there and in Libya.
Okay, I've got about 10 seconds for Murray Rankin and Joyce Murray. Murray Rankin, so it's not going to happen for the NDP.
I can't imagine why it would. The government has not provided us with information. They've even held information, basic financial information, from the parliamentary budget officer, for goodness sakes.
There's
no trust here. There's no trust that they're going forward in a way that we could support.
Okay, Joyce Murray, 10 seconds.
Well, I don't believe they want all-party support because they haven't demonstrated that by being open and honest with other parliamentarians nor with Canadians.
Okay, we're going to leave it
More
there.
than welcome, yeah.
We're going to leave it there. We're going to talk about it a whole lot more next week. I appreciate you weighing in today. Thanks, James Bazan, Murray Rankin, Joyce Murray. Thanks, everybody.